But I think what was quite unique to my sort of peers of Black girls specifically, just feeling very much like we had to leave parts of ourselves at the door. The important thing is to not prioritize your embarrassment over the principle of learning and understanding someone else's name. I don't necessarily think that I'm the radical, angry Black girl voice, but she is so important.
Welcome back to Colorful, a podcast where we unpack race, privilege, and the stories that shape us. I am Sena Zungu, joined here by my millennial best friend, Stacy Jane. Stace, today I'm not going to do anything Gen Z. I'm just going to ask you, how are you?
What?
Yep. No.
Normally you say that, how do it?
No, it's how I normally say what it do.
What? Yes, that's what you normally say. So guys, today I am outnumbered in the studio with Gen Zers. Right?
Yes.
2 beautiful Gen Zers. And we have an incredible guest today, a force to be reckoned with in the youth activation space and as a social entrepreneur. So you are an author, a TEDx speaker, a media strategist. Look, I have to read this. There's so many amazing things that you have accomplished already. A creative consultant and co-founder of Blackboard Africa. Amonge Sinxoto, it is so lovely to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for learning my name.
Names matter.
Yeah, they do. They do matter. And we'll get more into that a little bit later. But we're so excited to have you here. I was telling you offline that I'm absolutely obsessed with you.
Honestly, I feel the same way. Like, I'm so excited about the platform that you guys have started, and it's just so beautiful, and I'm excited to get into it for sure.
Yeah. Amazing. So before we do that, there is a bottle of red nail polish on the table.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what's coming.
Uh-huh.
So red for us, red is our brand color, but it's our brand color because it speaks about action. It speaks about being bold. It speaks about being courageous. And so we have decided in the spirit of being bold and courageous and also just being girlies, that we paint one hand red for all of our interviews.
Cute.
What have you got today on your second hand? Blue.
Blue.
I also got blue.
Yes, so there you go. Sorry you didn't get the memo for that.
I know, guys. Why didn't you tell me?
So Amonge, can you please paint one hand of your nails red?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then we will take a look at all 3 red hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And while you're doing that with that red, rebellious and bold color, I want to ask you, ladies, when was the last time you felt your most powerful? I'll hold that for you.
When I felt the most powerful. I don't know. I recently went back to studying, and I think that was really, really crazy to sort of go back to the space and like compare how I felt about it previously, which was kind of like dread and exhaustion and, you know, all of those things. But going back and now feeling excitement and feeling really, really just encouraged and like, this is the place I'm supposed to be. It was a really huge like source of power, because I think going back there when I wasn't ready, it made me feel really, really weak. And like, I was like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't finish it. Like, I felt exhausted, and I was really, really hard on myself. So like going back and owning the space, I realized that like, it had nothing necessarily to do with my own capabilities, but with like me being ready and being in the headspace to do it. And it was insanely powerful. So yeah.
The power of recalibration and being able to take a break. And I think we'll get into it a little bit later in this interview. Because I do think it's linked with this notion of being excellent at times and Black excellence. So I'm excited to unpack that with you, and power to you for your academic pursuits.
Thank you.
Stace, you?
Stace, I think mine would be, I was trying to think about it. I think it's like, I really enjoy wearing red lipstick, and I recently put on my red lipstick at a pretty big conference that I spoke at, and I felt quite powerful.
Slay.
So I think like there's certain things that can make you just, Amonge, as you said, like it wasn't about you. The power sat there, right?
Absolutely.
It's just about what are some of the external things that you can do in the mental headspace that you're in as well, that enable you to feel powerful in different moments. And I think I found that red lipstick might be it. And maybe a set of red nails.
I love that, because honestly, when I look at you on stage, I'm always mesmerized. But when we unpack after you give a keynote address, I always find that you absolutely don't have the benefit of seeing yourself in the way that I see you.
Stop.
And, and there it is again, being discomforted by any sort of praise. We got to work on that. But anyway, me now, I guess.
Yes, you know.
I'd say the last time I felt the most powerful was a group of my girlfriends, including yourself, Stace, because we are here in Joburg, flew in to celebrate my birthday with me this weekend. Yeah. And to be surrounded by a community of women who build me up, who absolutely love me, who have actually reparented me in many ways and healed a huge part of me, is something that I don't take for granted, and I feel so powerful in their midst. So, yeah. That's me.
And we've spoken about this birthday weekend so many times. It really is something so special when you are empowered by your friends who love you for all of it.
Yeah.
And through all of it. Yeah.
Wait, so are you in Aries?
I am in Aries.
I love that.
Oh,
very cute. Very cute. My little sister's in Aries. Love it.
And also another reason, your little sister is quite significant in this interview as well. So I can't wait to chat about her. How are you doing on the nails?
I'm done.
Look at that.
Oh, God, those are good.
I know.
Wow. If it doesn't work out for you in youth activism, you gotta take
Yeah,
the
social
money.
entrepreneurship, like maybe when you're not taking over the world. Okay. Everybody, a little close up.
A little
Yeah,
close
if you're
up.
watching us, there you go. So yeah, let's get into it, Amonge.
Your journey into activism started, it started in high school where you said that systems were really challenging. Tell me a little about that.
Oh, high school. I think it's a time that's obviously very challenging for anyone because you're like grappling with your own identity. But I think what was quite unique to my sort of peers of Black girls specifically, just feeling very much like we had to leave parts of ourselves at the door. I mean, I went to an all-girls school, but having to leave parts of ourselves at the door in order to be successful in this space. So that meant your language. I was really big on hair. Like I had crazy hairstyles. It was Afro-punk days. Like I was really bold in my choices, and it was always a huge point of contention in my school. And then also not feeling desired or supported by your fellow Black men. One of the major sort of trigger points of us starting Blackboard was there was these voice notes of guys talking about Black girls like, oh, they stink, and oh my days, like I would never be caught dead with the Black girl. And this was
Black
a
men?
Black guy in the voice note. And I think what was so profound is that it wasn't shocking. Like it's not rhetoric that was jarring to hear because we can tell, we can totally tell that this is how you feel about us. But to have it materialize in that way and the lack of shock factor was what really pushed me to be like, okay, no, there's definitely some internalized racism going on. And where is this coming from? What's kind of leading to that? And so that was what pushed us to start Blackboard Africa. Yeah.
That's so significant to me because I think even when we speak about transformation and we speak about really including more people and institutions, we look at it on more like an individual level of, okay, the space looks diverse because I also went to school with plenty of Black boys, but the way that the institution was sort of set up meant that they began to internalize that racism. Even if you did have the numbers, the culture would very much reflect a sort of white culture that was quite frankly racist. I mean, I read a profile with you on it and you spoke about even threats. It wasn't at your TEDx talk. You spoke about threats of speaking your native language in school being threatened with detention. And it's such a common experience. I experienced it too.
You know, Sena, you've just reminded me of a memory that I had from high school, and I went to high school a long time before you guys. But I remember that was a rule. You weren't allowed to speak in any language other than English, even if you were standing amongst your friends who could have spoken any other language. And I don't know because I never experienced this myself, but I wonder if the same rules would have applied if they started speaking in French or Italian or whatever. I highly doubt it.
No.
But I remember that was a rule, an actual school rule.
I mean, I doubt it because our motto was like Frank Halil. So, I mean, if you were speaking another language, like I think that would probably be accepted as opposed to speaking like a native language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to school in this environment. This is what transpires. But let's take it a step even before that. What does your home life look like? Who is Amonge?
Yeah.
Before you stepped into or like stepped up to speak about these issues. Yeah.
I was really, I think privileged in the sense that I was extremely supported. I come from a 2-parent household and it was always really loving, really supportive. It's a big family. I'm the eldest of 5. So there's definitely that like eldest daughter.
Let's talk about Black excellence. We'll get
definitely there's something to be talked about there, but I definitely always felt supported. My aunt is a creative, so I think there was a lot of, and my mom is a creative as well. So I think there was always a real push to understand the beauty and the potential of the arts to push narratives forward, and the importance of representation in that space and a really authentic storytelling that is driven by us. So that has always been really present in sort of like my influences. But my grandfather, they were in exile. My grandfather and my mom's side, they lived in the US for most of their life and then they moved back to South Africa. So I think there's a really strong sense of activism as well and justice, and there are things that are right and there are things that are not okay. And we should never be afraid to like speak out on that. Just like my parents' approach to just my life in general, they were never those parents to like step in and come to the school and like shout out my teachers for me. They were very much like, okay, I hear you, I love you, but you're going to sort this one out on your own. And then I would have to go and use my big girl voice and say, so teacher, I didn't appreciate that.
Wow, that's great.
That's so that was sort of the environment that I grew up in. And I think in many ways, as you can see, like it inevitably shaped me. Yeah.
I mean, speaking up against things that you stand for, you wrote a book that in fact my children have read that we've enjoyed together, My Big Name.
So glad.
So tell us a little about that. How did that come to be?
My Big Name is the name of the book. And it's based on my little sister, Nguye. And what happened was she went to school and then me and my mom went to her like parent teacher, like display thing. And we were like, okay, cool. Let's see her station. And this was grade 1. So we know she was super excited about it. And it was just written Izzy everywhere. And we're like, I think we're at the wrong place. Like what's going on here? And they were like, no, that's Izzy's spot. And we're like,
who's Izzy, girl?
So that was quite jarring. And I think, as we were having conversations about it, it was in COVID. We were all sort of locked up together and we were talking about it more. And I just saw that like generationally, we were all experiencing it. This was my little sister. Then it was me. And then my mom was having the same experience and she grew up as a minority in New Jersey. So I think there's definitely a generational curse that needs to be broken here was where the conversation started. And it's really always about education and like reaching out to children and letting them advocate for themselves about the way that they want to be identified. That's what it's always been about. So it's not to shame anybody. It's not to, push anybody out of the conversation or to create fear around getting things wrong. Because when you're learning, you will get it wrong. But the important thing is to not prioritize your embarrassment over the principle of learning and understanding someone else's name. So
how beautiful is that? I mean, how often do we speak about that? The fact that you will mess up when you're learning. But the important thing is to keep learning. And to go to that place of discomfort because that's where you can actually figure things out.
Exactly.
And change.
And to just even bother trying. I think we speak a lot about it in the context of names, how dehumanizing it is. And also in the context of the history of this country and names.
Yeah.
It's a willful ignorance many of the time, a lack of even wanting to try and to see the other person. Because, ethnic names have such meaning. I was just asking you what your name means.
Yes. So my name means Amonge, which means nurture in Xhosa. That God should just like nurture my life, and in some way that I should continue to sort of like spread that nurturing onto the world. And so, yeah, that's another thing that's like a really important theme in the book, is that also our names are linked to powers, to meaning, to just wishes and prayers from our families over our lives. And so when you change that without my permission, without my consent, you take away its meaning, you take away its power, and really kind of driving that home in all of our conversations. So
it's a theme we've explored so many times on this podcast. Respect my name, take the time to use my name because it has meaning. Obviously it has meaning. It is it is who you are. And as you say, it was given to you as a blessing on your life,
exactly.
and as a prelude to what's to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, you are living up to your name.
Yeah, right.
As the nurturer. Amonge, I want to take it a little bit of a step back, because you're now in high school. This voice note blows up.
Yeah.
What is the sequence of events, and how are you then thrust into what really was a movement at the time that swept the country? Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's kind of what started the conversation. And then we're like, okay, cool, we have to do something about it. But I think what's really I think the theme there is that storytelling and narrative centering was always at the center of our conversation. So it was like, okay, we have to talk, we have to get together, and we have to have dialogues, and we have to have a platform for people to lend their voice to these different issues. And it was all around just exploring identity, centering the African narrative, and defining what that means for us as, this new generation. Like, what does this mean to us, and how do we experience it? How do we come to terms with, the remnants of that, but also making it our own and making it our own legacy. And I think from that point onwards, we just kind of continue to have those conversations. And then around that time, Pretoria girls went crazy with Zuleika Patel. So it was kind of just like a snowball, like you said, of a movement that was happening across the country and across the world. Like, there was a really strong shift towards, recognizing different African identities, just having more open conversations about what our experiences look like, what shaped them, and our identity was always at the center of that for us. So really just pushing those conversations forward, and then spearheading into sort of leadership and defining what leadership looks like. But you have to know yourself in order to be able to be an effective leader. You have to come to terms with who you are and who you want to be and what kind of imprint you want to make, in order to be able to lead anyone, never mind yourself. You have to lead yourself first. So that's really what our work has sort of evolved into, which is leadership training, mentorship, but it's all around identity and having, who you are be at the center of the things that drive your passions and your contribution to the world.
Actually, we're going to pick that up, because I think it's fascinating that you're saying to me, like with Blackboard, the center of it is your identity, celebrating that. I feel like in the development space, specifically the youth development space in Africa, it still takes on such a Eurocentric narrative of like, empower, exactly. It can feel at times almost like neocolonialism. So holding that to the center is really incredible. What's the reception to that, to saying that you're not going to separate the identity from the leader, from the entrepreneur, from the young person?
I think it's been received really well. From the young people that we work with, because our approach is obviously for young people by young people. So we really take a really dynamic approach to it. We're not like heavily focused on the theory. Like, of course that has a role to play, but we really want to get practical, like get on the ground, explore. And when you do that, you sort of see how it plays out in real life. And if you don't lead from where you are and who you are, what you have, or like, having that understanding of where you are first, that is a really great foundation to start anything. And so that's been received really, really well, from our fellow young people. And then, just people from other generations as well. Or like I remember as a child always being like, everyone was so excited to be like, oh, wow, what was I doing when I was your age? And I'm like, I don't know, babes, but here we are. Can you find this chick though?
Yeah. What I need from you now is...
Thank you so much.
Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah.
Exactly.
And also not to be infantilized. Like, oh, how cute. And if you truly believe in the cause and you believe that the leaders of tomorrow, are you expecting them to lead
Sign
today?
at the dotted line. Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about that, right? So we're talking about Blackboard, but we're talking about leadership in general, youth, and obviously a big enabler of that is social media. Social media, a topic that is just so huge.
Yeah.
But you've described social media as one of your biggest allies, which I think is quite a big statement to make, because social media stuff can go one of two ways.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. How social media is your big ally?
We can't take for granted what social media allows us access to. You just are infinitely more connected to so many more perspectives. I feel that social media is one of the places where, we're just connected to like-minded individuals. And I think that's so, so powerful because it allows us to move in our power more. Like now I can say all of the weird thoughts that I have in my head because I'm like, no, there's someone on TikTok who agrees. And yeah. 250,000 people who liked it. So I'm not that weird. I think I'm actually very normal and I can lead in that power, So I think there's something really incredible about that. But I think I've also been very vocal about how it has to go hand in hand. Like the social media is a great megaphone. I think it's a platform, it's the media, it's the way that you reach out to people on that level, but it has to materialize into practical actions and practical, work. You have to do the work in connection with that voice. Otherwise, it's kind of lost. So social media is really incredible in that sense. And I know it has the potential to go another way, but I think the more of us get excited about it and excited about its potential, the better the space will be, the better the potential for that space will be if we all start taking ownership to use it for the better,
Yeah.
I think I love that point on intentional action after the megaphone fact. An interesting research was actually done by the Pew Research Center, and it found that while most believe in social media and its power, a lot of people felt as though it actually has this effect of making people believe that they're doing something when they're not. Now, this research was only done in America, but I'm interested to get your perspective within the South African context of bridging that gap between knowledge sharing and mobilizing online and then turning that into intentional action.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a fine line to sort of balance because I do think that there's a lot of value in simply educating.
Wow.
Education is incredibly powerful and it makes it more accessible. Education is no longer being sort of gate-kept in institutions. Like we're sharing information right now, in a way that more people will be able to reach, more people will be able to engage with on a more meaningful level. Like it's personal, when we take it to being personal, our education, and into our lives, that's when we start shifting mindsets. So I do think that it has that power and I don't ever want to sort of take away from that. But yeah, you've also gotta put down the phone at one point and really walk the walk, talk the talk in your own life. And that's what makes sort of the action meet the voice, if that makes sense.
I mean, and that's the point, right? Because it does run the risk of being performative.
Yeah.
It's performative activism. If you don't really know what you're doing, and you're just jumping on what looks cool in the moment, without understanding the nuance that sits behind it or even the reason for its existence.
Exactly.
And that's a really big caution that we need to take in in social media activism in general and activism in general, which is made public through social media.
Yeah. And even on that point of, Stace, I'm going to actually flip this to you because we had this discussion on performative activism as I was, I think I was just reading up on Amonge because I knew she was going to join us in the studio and we were doing the research and I was like, it sent me back to so many moments when hashtags have really catapulted and actually started social movements. And I said to you, Stace, well, what was the reaction in your circles from a white perspective? What were people saying during Black Lives Matter? What were they saying during Fees Must Fall? What do they say to these hashtags when these movements sort of spring up? So I guess that's my question.
Yeah, I don't love the answer and I don't love resharing it again. But the truth is, I don't think there was very much conversation about it, if I'm honest. I think there was a superficial sharing of a black square. But I don't think there was real engagement with the conversation behind it. And it did immediately flip to All Lives Matter. And, which if you had any engagement with the entire movement was not about, nobody's questioning whether anybody's lives don't matter. Well, they are, but that wasn't the point of the conversation. And I think it can be extremely superficial when you approach it from the position of privilege. And if you don't use it as an opportunity to be educated and use that as your stepping stone to saying, hey, well, maybe I'm going to put some work in and figure out what this is actually all about that I've just been introduced to via social media, then it can be really harmful because then you're sharing something without any real backing. And so to answer your question, I don't think there was much engagement at all.
And Amonge, when we sat together at the DI roundtable where I met you, you shared an anecdote of, sort of some of the systems you'd start to put in place and the conversations you were having back in your high school days and, seeing the traction sort of being lost years later. I guess my question is, how do you deal with fatigue from, continuing with the same message and then reflecting back and seeing, was there actual impact made?
I know. And I think it's a really relevant conversation to be having now more than ever with, where the world is. It can really feel like we have been working for so long. But I think you have to remember that there were people working way before us and before them and before them. Impact works in waves. And there will be dips, but as long as we keep, pushing the narrative forward, there will always be a rise. There will always come a time where, things will flip. And even this dip, I think it's harmful. It is hard. It's exhausting. But it's also exposing a lot of things that we've been talking about. And so I think a part of some of the rhetoric that I had been hearing a lot was just, okay, but I don't know if this is all necessary as much anymore because is it really that bad? And so I think this dip has really shown us, no, it's worse than we even imagined. So it's funny enough reinforcing our work, reinforcing our power and reinforcing the importance of everything that we're doing. So of course that will come, but I think you just have to have a really great sisterhood. I love my girls.
Yes.
They really keep me going. We just need to be able to kiki about it, be sad about it and cry about it and be mad about it. Be mad about, the way things are going, but be able to lift each other up as well and to keep going. The important thing is to keep going, and consistency isn't necessarily showing up as your 100% every day. It's showing up every day, period.
That's such a valid point, because it does get tiring. It gets really exhausting when you're saying the same thing over and over again in different circles, or worse, in the same circles. And that's a really good point. You don't have to be at your 100% every time, but you do need to show up.
To show up. And I think another point you made on sisterhood and community, I think it matters now exactly, really important now more than ever. We actually have been speaking about this because we're like, we couldn't have picked a worse time to start a podcast on race and privilege. Like everybody's like la 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 la.
But you know what it's done though is it's exposed. I mean, it's exposed. A lot of people were just silent for a long time, and the people who are now speaking, I'm talking about in a negative sense.
Yeah,
you know, people are having their racism are quite comfortable saying, yeah, I mean, they may not say I am a racist, but they're agreeing with very racist ideas and ideologies and things, and it's actually in a way it's kind of helpful because now I know who I'm dealing with. I was at a ride recently when I sat down and we were talking about one of the interviews, Sena, you and I did with Dan Quarter earlier in the year. And I sat down next to a white man, and and my girlfriends and I were all chatting about this interview, and they were asking me how it went. And he said, that guy, what did he say exactly? How did I tell you? He said, that guy, I
don't rate him or something like that.
Or something like, so I said, oh, why? And he says, well, because he hates the DA. I was like, okay, A, he doesn't. So if you knew anything about him, you'll realize that he comments on all political parties equally. But also, that's just a veiled way of saying, I'm racist. Like in my ideology, I want to support white supremacy, male supremacy, whatever it is. But at least now I know. And I just feel like this is giving us a bit of a platform to figure out who allies are and who they aren't.
Yeah. But Stace, even that, for example, I know someone in how you've articulated may come after you and say that is absolutely not true or whatever. You can never really indict them and say, okay, you said this because you are racist. There's always that plausible deniability, which is what I feel like is the refreshing part, is that maybe we're even losing that.
Yes,
so now
exactly.
you know what you're dealing with. So now we know the extent of the work that needs to be done in some way. But Amonge, I want to ask you a question on sort of like, burning out, and reflecting and moving forward and showing up every day. Are there moments that you wish you would have done something differently in your activism journey?
Honestly, not really. Like, I think I try to be really gentle with myself in the sense that, like, I'm really grateful that I started when I did. So now I look back and I'm like, you did what?
I still can't even believe
it. You're crazy, girl. Like, so I really think I look back on my journey with a lot of grace, because there were definitely mistakes made. I look back at some of my interviews and I'm like, huh. Oh, okay.
Relatable.
Relatable. Yeah.
But, you know, like, it was a learning curve, and it was really bold and courageous to do something, anything. And so I really have an intense amount of like gratitude to my younger self. And I think sometimes a lot of people like have reflective moments, and you like, oh, what I wish I could have told my younger self. And I want to hear from my younger self. Like, I need her to like reboot my life, because she was just unstoppable. And I just want to channel her always, like, because she's a powerhouse. So yeah, I think even the sort of mistakes that I made of like, you know, being 16 and not knowing what it means to really, you know, start a nonprofit and register it and this and that, and, you know, all of these documents that are needed. But it was all a huge part of my learning journey, and everything came when it needed to come. And I had a lot of support, and I learned through that process, and I honestly wouldn't change a thing. Everything served a purpose in my journey, and I'm so grateful for it. Yeah.
I'm grateful for the grace at which you say that, because it's really difficult at times when you really care. You're passionate about a cause. You understand the real life implications of the systemic oppression. And then, we do a lot, and we say a lot, and when our circumstances demand us to. So I think I've met a lot of activists that say you got to look back on the journey with grace. Stace, we're a year in this now, speaking openly about race and privilege. In a country where, I'm keen to hear. Do you wish you'd done something differently?
Oh, it's a bit of a left field question. Do I? No, actually, I really don't. The one thing I have struggled with is No, wait, let me start with what I'm happy that we've done. We've just done it. We didn't wait for it to look perfect. We didn't wait to have all the right language. I think we understood even at the beginning. Certainly I had to understand. You had a more developed understanding of what we were getting into. But I had to understand that I was going to make mistakes and that I was probably going to get called out for them. And quite frankly, that's due. If that's the worst that I have to face, that's fair.
Yeah.
So you got to have a thick skin, but you've also got to really, you've got to do it. You can't just talk about it. You can't just stay away from it because it's uncomfortable. So I think we did what I wouldn't change it. I think the one thing that is difficult is because when you feel so strongly for something, you want everybody to see it too.
Yeah.
And what I've had to learn is when to step away and when to engage. And that's been quite a learning, but no, I wouldn't change. Would you?
No, I wouldn't change anything. I think because of where it's come from, the place which it's come from, with no malicious intent, not sitting on a high horse.
Yeah.
Are there moments actually where I think I am warranted to express healthy anger and I opt not to because I'm conscious of how the message will land? I am guilty of that. Is it something I hope to unlearn in the future? Yes. But I guess I'm going to come to this question out because it's about tailoring a message for an audience. And you and I, Stace, often say that we have to do a lot of brainstorming as to how to communicate in the way that has the most effect.
Yeah.
And at times you're accused of maybe being too palatable, too kind on the issue, too politically correct. I don't know if you can ever be as politically correct as having a podcast to speak about race and privilege, but I guess I want to ask you is, do you ever feel pressure to present your message on the youth, on social issues in a certain way, even when the anger and outrage is warranted?
No, absolutely. And I think I need to keep staying in therapy about my anger because I don't have a really good relationship with anger. Like it stays within. But I think I am comfortable with the fact that maybe isn't my role. I think we need people on both ends of the spectrum, who are gonna push the narrative forward. So I don't necessarily think that I'm the radical, angry Black girl voice, but she is so important because if she didn't exist, I would be her and no one would listen to what the next person would have to say and so on and so forth. If that makes sense, that like we need the sort of the role of different voices at different levels, at different temperaments, because it's going to reach people at different ways, because the way that we're having this conversation now is not going to reach certain people, and that is okay. Our job is not to necessarily fix everyone, or to not even fix, but just to address every single person on the planet. It's just impossible. But, you know, people will find people who speak to them at their level, and it's important for all of us to be talking. All of our voices are equally important because they both serve the narrative, and the role of that person sort of pushes you forward too. Like, okay, I need to check myself. You know what I mean? Like it keeps us all in line. So the relevance of all of our voices and our authentic selves is so important. So yeah, I don't know that that's necessarily me, but I know that my role is just as important as their role. So I'm not too worried about it, honestly. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Black Girl Magic, because you are her, right? I mean, can you even just your language, your articulation, and your deep understanding of your role and our role, ours being obviously the collective in taking conversation forward, I think is a beautiful example of Black Girl Magic. Does that feel like pressure for you?
No, not so much, because I think I try, and I think we should all be trying to I think sometimes Black girl magic can be like put on a pedestal, and I'm not talking about all of that. I'm just like, Black girl magic is in the little moments. It's in it's in all the little things. And I think when we think of it in that way, then again, there's just less pressure. Like, black girl magic is wearing my do-rag this morning. Black girl magic is like, it's all of those little things. It's like, it's your language, it's your hair, it's your culture, it's your, it's all of those little things. And it's also the fact that, I've done all of these amazing things and I'm the first and I am the most pronounced or this or that, the other. Like, those are magical too. But the magic for me, finding the magic in the mundane is where I have really thrived. And so that's what has made it always made it like attainable and like digestible to everyone, that there's magic in all of us. And once we recognize that, then it becomes a little less intimidating. And I like to think of myself as magical.
Yeah. Hey? Yes.
Girl, your therapist be so lit. Because I literally...
Does your therapist slap?
She slaps,
Did I use it right?
You used it right.
You did.
The therapist slaps. Because I wish, personally, I wish that's something I could start to... I wish I'd learned that lesson earlier on, of finding the beauty in the mundanity and the magic in just existing. And I feel as though, a black girl magic to me meant that, okay, this is because you've ticked off all of these things. This is because you show up in a certain way. And as a result of that, I think I put myself under an immense amount of pressure. And so there's a mental health side flip of black girl magic. And the way that you've articulated that is almost humanizing the black girl experience, and that we don't only need to show up as anything but excellent. And it's exhausting. And I think it's such a healthy way. So shout out to your therapist.
Sena, tell me a little bit more about black magic. We've had about black excellence.
Yes.
And we've had a lot of conversation about it, and share some thoughts with me about black excellence in general.
Well, I think it comes from, it's twofold, right? So there's the side of black excellence where I think it originates from of, the lack of representation we see in very important areas of society, areas of influence, areas of excellence. So, we see representations of this excellence, and then, to celebrate it, and also to sort of point out how novel and rare it is, which is obviously not okay. We celebrate black excellence, and that's the beautiful positive side of it, right? And then the downside, especially my observations, or I feel like especially with white people, they almost use that excellence as the rule and not the exception. Almost normalizing the hardships and the disproportionate barriers that black people have to go through and fight for their right to just exist in these spaces. And then be like, oh, right, see, if that person could do it, the richest man in the world or the richest man in South Africa, this is a black person. So therefore black people are, they exist no barriers. And we see it all the time, every single year with matric results coming out. And there's a story about a matric student who managed to get in the top 1% of results, but they had no access to resources. They had no access. And then the media sort of will pick it up, or the popular discourse will be, okay, but look at what this kid went through. So therefore everybody else who is met with these circumstances can do it. And so I think there is a sort of
specific black names that have succeed in certain industry and say, well, they can do it. Why or not? Why are not all black people doing it? But they are like the most they have overcome twice.
Almost as if that is okay. So looking at Amonge and her experience with hair in school and be like, well, why could you just write a book like that? Go talk about it with Michelle Obama. Like, Amonge did it. Why do you have to scream what you did? So I think it's beauty. I think there's beauty in celebrating. I think the hashtags are so important in educating as well, and highlighting that representation. But I think there is a very harmful side to it. And I think specifically that harmful narrative tends to stem from white people.
You mentioned hashtags. What are your favorite hashtags at the moment, Amonge?
Can I be honest? I haven't been in like the hashtag sphere in a while. I think I've moved away from that.
Yeah.
I think it's the TikTokization of everything.
Right.
And like, I'm not
Yeah.
hashtagging anymore. Unfortunately, it's so sad because like I look back at it with fond memories, but like I think that the time for me personally, I'm just not in the realm of hashtags as frequently as I was.
Do you think that they're losing relevance as TikTok rises and it isn't
And
so
video
much the
form.
product of hashtags? Do you think as a rule that's kind of falling away, hashtags?
I would say so, because I think what they served to do at a certain point was sort of create a thread between certain conversations so that they're all linked. But now, especially with like the developments of like AI and all of these things, like it's a lot easier to find ways to link different conversations that don't necessarily center around hashtags. So like I can go on TikTok and find the kind of content that I'm looking for, without having to put in a specific hashtag that links those conversations together. And even when I'm no longer on my explore page, TikTok and the algorithm will be feeding it to me because that's where we are now. So yeah, I think I haven't needed to use that as much anymore as like a point of reference.
You've given me such incredible insight. And as you're just speaking there, I'm like, Stace, actually what I'm observing is more trends as a way to start conversations than it is hashtags.
Yeah.
Like I died at the woman in men's field.
Yes, I love that. Or like microfeminisms. I love it. See, those are the things that are like,
Yeah. So I think we're going to see trends and these sounds sort of trending and then that's starting a conversation. And I think it's still so impactful and still like it's still moving. But I think you can see the natural progression of like where social media and activism is sort of organically now going. Can you predict the next sort of social movement or what we're going to start to be having conversations about that may not necessarily be the easiest, but are well needed?
Jeez. I'm not entirely sure what the next will be, but I think it's something that's already started, but about pronouncing our role in this like sort of shift towards AI and technology. Like, where do we see ourselves, and actually where are the dangers of this technology, and where is it sort of I don't think it is kind of making certain functions obsolete, right? Which in as a result is making sort of certain industries like, they're deteriorating. But I do think that there will be a resurgence of something else to take up for it. So I'm not so much worried about that, but I think a little bit worried about it being the thing to dictate, the way our conversations go, especially when you look at what a lot of these platforms and who a lot of these platforms are being run and facilitated, and who's controlling the narrative on those things. So I think AI has a lot of potential to push us and like to enable us to just do more. Like it's functional. Functionally, we can do more. We have the capacity to do more, which is great, but we still need to have a very active role in directing that. So I think there might be a conversation around that, but
and being discerning about the content that we keep getting fed.
Exactly.
Because, what we watch more of, we obviously get more of, but at what point are we going to step back and be like, whoa, let me just have a look at this, and how much of it is true?
Exactly.
It's, for me, I know I asked Amonge this question, but as she was answering it, I'm actually thinking also a rise in anti-intellectualism as a result of AI and not being discerning of where the information's coming from, taking it as is without giving it a critical view. That terrifies me. That terrifies me so much, and especially algorithm-tailored content. I think we started seeing that. And you and I recently watched Adolescence, which I'm not going to get into. There's another episode all on its own.
Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking, yeah.
Heartbreaking. Just, Oh,
so many things.
chilling. Like, what do you mean? That's the way that you think? And we've been living in proximity to you guys this whole time?
Like, are you?
What?
Yeah. Also, the effects on developing minds.
Yeah.
It's just so layered and so complex, but I do think it's a conversation we need to start having before things really spill over.
Yeah.
Okay, Amonge, who should our next guest be? Considering how we talk about race, privilege, personal stories, relatable. How do I show up in my personal space? How do I be an intentional activist in the places that I occupy? Who do you think has a great perspective to share with us?
I think Lebogang Masango, she's a great person to sort of dive into this conversation with you. Her book, The Soft Life, around, just like women and Black women in particular and how they choose to enter romantic relationships, and that there are standards that they need to meet for like socioeconomic reasons, but like it's so frowned upon because of who they are and like, where they sit in the ecosystem of, our society. So I just think that would be a really interesting conversation. And she's an incredible person. She's a poet. She's the best. She's the best.
Oh, we love the best.
So
Lebogang, check your DMs, girl.
Oh, Amonge, it was so great to have you in studio with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for living life in full color. I think that is exactly what you do. And we were just a really good conversation.
Thank you both.
Yep. Guys, you've heard it. We can each show up intentionally in our spaces. So please share this podcast, please subscribe, let all your friends know about it, and have the conversations that matter. Till next time.